So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modularize this particular program. It's our fabulous donut program from before. And I appreciate, I kind of did an exercise similar to this when I did the mission names. That got a little bit more complicated. So if you're still feeling a little bit fuzzy, this is supposed to basically kind of help cement that with a simpler example. You'll notice that in this case, just to remind you, I'm using a tuple up here. I've commented out these months because for my testing, I only really want to just basically test it with 2 months. This is some variables that would basically sit out in the global memory. This kind of classifies as the input section. This kind of classifies as the processing section, and this kind of classifies as the conclusion, the output section. Now, what I'm going to say is that while this is fine to run on its own, it's kind of not so much of a program as a script. What I want to do is I want to create a function that will basically do the output in one thing, the processing in one thing, and the input in one thing. Basically, try to modularize it. Right. This is done sort of for maintainability. It's done for repeatability. For example, once I run it once, not in this environment, a visualizer, but if I did this in idle or if I did this in some other environment, what I'd be able to do, for example, is run the whole thing, and then later on, if I want, I can just run the input section with different values, and then basically fire off the processing or fire off the output, or fire off the output again and again and again. Or even if I decided, hey, you know what, there's a problem somewhere in the code, it's got to be in the way it's being calculated. Well, I have less code to look at because my processing code is only that many lines long. I wouldn't even be tempted to look at the other lines. I would also make an argument that there is some possible efficiencies here with variables. Variables will only exist in the function that they are defined in. Now, in this case, most of these variables, let's just say this program's not super taxing on the memory of anything. But anyway, I'm hoping this will become more clear as I start going through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one of these simpler examples here. And let's see if I shrink this a little bit. Does that help? No, I go through this all the time, right? I can't show too much here. But I'm going to change this area here, which is the output, to be an actual output module. Now to do that, it's basically def. So I'm going to define something which I'm going to call print output colon. Now what happens here, watch this, as each line would then get added, see how it gets indented, very similar, by the way, to the if and the whiles and all that stuff, because basically the block knows it's part of the function by the indenting of it. Now, this would actually define that procedure. So I'm going to show you what it's going to look like in memory for a second. I'm just going to remove this, visualize the execution. We go next. What it does is it creates a pointer in memory to this particular program. It doesn't actually run this program. In fact, if it was to run this program, the way I'd want to do that is I'd have to call it directly by basically saying print output. I go print output, it's going to go from line 2, create a piece of memory, it points to this program, doesn't run it, just points to it. Now I'm saying, hey, run this program. The processing is going to shoot up, it's going to go into the print, and it's likely going to explode because that variable tote donut doesn't exist, and tote donut does not exist. All right, so that's kind of how functions work. You define them and then you call them. Now, it doesn't know what tote donuts is because it's not defined anywhere. I could pass in a variable called tote. Oops. Oh, that's right. Okay, I don't want to lose what's in my memory. So I'm going to go I'm going to type it here, and I'll probably get them wrong. But there's tote donuts. I'm going to pass in av donuts. I'm going to pass in and stir best month. I'm going to pass in, and then the guy here, flit max amount. I'm going to pass in flit max amount, and I see I've done a couple mistakes there. It's going to be max with the X, and the amount at the end is without the N. All right, so we do that. Now, I'm saying that whenever I call print output, it's going to use these three variables. This is basically called the argument, right? So the argument. It's expecting four values being passed in. So if I passed in basically 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I go and visualize the execution, get rid of that. Line 2 defines something in memory. Line 7 calls. Now watch that. These values 1, 2, 3, 4 get passed into total donuts, average donuts, string best month, and max amount. And so now as we go in here, we're going to start seeing that this stuff will print out wonderfully. All right, and then we leave. So there, for your screenshotness, there is again calling a function and passing stuff in. All right, so that's pretty cool. Well, now let's put the rest of the stuff back in there and see how that would actually work. So in this case, it looks to me that we have this variable called average donuts seems to already exist. So I could go copy and put that in the second argument. Total donuts. Now I've kept these guys, the names the same, mostly for my ease of coding. But, you know, I'll tell you again, they don't have to be the same, right? So had I gone and called this thing, you know, just max amount, for example, it could be called max amount here, but whatever I'm passing in will just go into that bucket, like we kind of saw with 1, 2, 3, 4 going into the bucket, into the function. All right, so now if I run this thing, this should work. So again, creating some variables out there. Now, of course, we're going through getting our values. So let's go through the input phase again. And I think, by the way, if you're a little lost right now because you've forgotten how the donut works, this is where you might want to go back and revisit that video. But either way, at this point, we've done all the processing for the donuts and we're just about to print now, right? So it knows stuff. And so what I'm doing now is I'm going to define myself something called print output. There it is. And now we're going to pass in these values. And watch what happens when it goes in. A whole new chunk of memory happens. And this whole chunk of memory has got these variable values passed in. And now processing is going to come into here. And once we're inside print output, we're only in the blue section. We're not in the other section. So it's completely unaware of any of the other variables outside, sort of. And then we're going to go, and now when that thing finishes, that piece of memory disappears, and along with it, the memory. Cool. All right. So there is a bit of processing with passing things in, but a lot of times functions actually return things out. Let's simplify this area here. So this area here is the processing part. So I'm going to create myself a variable, which I'm going to call calc donut sales. And inside calc donut sales, it's going to go through that dictionary. Okay, and right there. Now, so this chunk of code is going to happen for calc donut sales. Now, it seems to me that as we're going to go in here, by the way, the other thing I should do is, Remember, I'll just define it, so I should probably actually call it. Okay, so that's going to call it. So lines 12 through 21 define it. Line 23 calls it. So it's not going to work though, right? Because Dick Donuts isn't defined in here. It is defined out here, but it's not defined inside this module. What I want to do is I want to pass in. Actually, do I want to pass that in? What do I want to do? I want to pass in. Actually, no, I don't want to pass. Yes, I do. I want to pass in this donut. All right, so I'm going to go pass in Dick Donuts, and then that's going to allow stuff to come in. But then how do I get these values that it's calculating out? How do I get out the total donuts? How do I get out the flat max amount, the best month, and the average? And the answer to that one, as we learned from the previous video, is we return it. So I'm going to return it. And you know what really kind of helps if I just use the same variable string here? I'm going to return those values. So that means that when this is finished, it's going to want to return those values. Now this program won't work yet, but let me show you how that works. So I go visualize, and we go through and we do this little calculate, the input section. That's one, and do the input section. All right, so now I got myself to the point that it's the dictionary is built, and now it's going to define. And now it's about to run. So it's going to run. Boom. So I've passed in Dick Donuts. So this dictionary is now coming into this function. We come in and it's going to go through. Oops, it's mad because, yeah. Makes sense why it's mad. All right, here's the deal. This line here, line 14, total donuts is assigned total donuts plus whatever. The problem is that total donuts doesn't exist yet. So how can I say this thing is assigned the same thing that doesn't exist? In this case, I'm going to take that initialization and I'm going to put it right there. So now it's going to be initialized inside of this particular program. Now thinking about it, I think I'm also going to remove these guys, because they are basically defined right here. You could argue that instead of removing them, maybe a better move would be to create them in here, and that's fine too. There you go. All right, and then the list we're going to keep outside for now. Okay, so let's run it again. Hide my shame, go down. It's going to go into the input section where I'm going to say, give me 100 here and 200 on the next one. All right. So now it's going to define the calc donut sales. Now it's going to go into the calc donut sales. And now notice that these variables are now being defined inside here. And now it's going to go through and do the various calculations it's supposed to do. It's going to do the average. And now look what it's about to return, right? So line 23, it's about to return. It's going to return a tuple. And this tuple will magically get thrust nowhere because this guy's got nowhere for this tuple to go to. So when we go to the next line, I've lost all that information. It's gone. It's gone. So here I had it. Now it's gone. So what we need to do is I need to have these variables, or a tuple that can handle it, being assigned what comes out of calc donuts. So calc donuts will run. It'll have that tuple, and that tuple will be assigned into these variables. So let's go next. And I should probably hard code this at some point because this I thought maybe it'd be a bit easier to simplified it, but that's fine. All right. Anyway, so here we go. Go through that loop a couple times. There's the average. Here's the tuple. It's about to come out. Now what's going to happen? This stuff is going to fly out to the global frame. We're going to go, bang. There it is. It's stuff thrown out to the global frame. Pretty neat. Okay, pretty neat. And then now just printing it. All right, let's go a little bit further. So I've got myself a processing function, and then there's the call to the processing function. I got myself an output function and a call to the output function. Let's go and now get an input function. So I'm going to go define, and this one I'm just going to call get sales. This guy doesn't take any arguments in. Now I tell you what I could do. Yeah, I'll tell you what I could do. Yeah, that's what I could do. I could take this tuple here, copy it. I could pass it in. Yeah, that's what I could do. Okay, so I'm going to take this variable called list month. We're going to have that thing being passed in. Okay, so it's going to expect a list and then process it the way that you're going to get processed. But I'm going to go here and have my call where I go get sales, and we're going to pass in this tuple. Okay, we're going to pass in that tuple. Now, notice this whole thing is building a dictionary. So you know what? Maybe just when it finishes doing the loop, I can say, please return out the dictionary. If it's going to return out the dictionary, we're going to ask the dictionary to be assigned this. So dictionary is assigned get sales. Now here's what I'm doing here. I'm going to just, oh, you know, this thing doesn't like comments. Okay. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go copy, and I'm just going to go here with the paste. All right. These lines I no longer need. All right, so let's go and visualize the execution. So this is going to define get sales, run get sales. So see how basically the tuple got passed in. It's now going to do its processing, I hope, reasonably well. Okay, it didn't do it reasonably well. Dick Donuts. Oh, Dick Donuts is got to be initialized. Good point. You can't just have a dictionary spontaneously being created there. I've got to basically say, hey, that line with the initialization should be right there. This guy's assigned an empty dictionary. All right, let's run that again. Hide my shame and go next. And up we go. And then there's our dictionary inside a get sales, not the global frame. And now we get our amounts here. Here's 100. And we go next. And now here's our next guy, 200. We go next. And now it's about to return out the dictionary out to the global frame. So watch this. This dictionary is right there. Is going to get passed out. And it's just about to shoot it out. Bang. And now get sales is gone, but Dick Donuts is there with the dictionary in the global frame. We'll be fixing that in a few minutes. Then I go next. And so at defined calculate our processing section, now it's going to go in to the processing section and do all that fun stuff that we know is going to go and do. There's our average. Now it's about to return. Here's a tuple. It's about to return a tuple. Where's it going to return the tuple? Out to the global frame. Bang. So now that global tuple out to the global frame, and now our processing section is gone. And now we're going to define our output section. So there's our output section, and I'm going to pass in these values, and the values are all coming in. And then it's going to go print, 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 and out. All right. So not too bad. We're still on the way, though. We're on the way here. We've got a couple more steps to do. So normal people don't write a function and then call a function, write a function, and then call a function. Normally what you'd actually have in one of these scripts is you'd have, and this is what the book does, you'd have a main function, and that main function would basically be the processing lines. So there's our Dick Donut line, our total donut line. I got to get my indenting right, and our printing line. So I don't do that anymore, just out in the middle of nowhere. I have it inside of a main function. Now, just to run this, which is many students do this when they get to this point, they run it and it seems nothing happened. And really nothing did happen because I defined a bunch of functions, but I never called any. What I need to do now is inside at the very end, I need to go and say main. And let's edit my code word, edit main. So it's kind of like in ancient times, it was called the main line. The program itself, the beginning, the middle, the end, would run through the main line. So this main function is a function that contains all the processing that you want your program to do. So you could argue that this is the program, and then these are the sub modules inside the program. So if I go run, and I go, and now we go into main, right? We're going to go into main, off it goes. Here's main's memory, and then watch how this guy starts to work. See, so there's the global frame, which has no variables in it at all. It's just basically got pointers to the functions. Now we've got this get cells, which is going to remember a few things. It's going to remember the dictionary that we're creating. Okay, so now these dudes are sitting inside of get cells. And now we're going to leave. And when we leave, we're going to take Dick Donuts. It's going to come out of get sales, and it's going to go into main. And we're going to say goodbye to our tuple. Our tuple will cease to exist. And go. Boom. Right? So now get sales is finished, and it left for us a gift inside of the main function, the tuple. Sorry, the dictionary. Now it's going to go into calc donut sales. So watch what happens now. Again, paying attention to the blue. Boom. So now we're out of the main, we're into the calc donut sales. It's going to start going through this now and doing all the various calculations it's supposed to do. Notice that the dictionary, by the way, is in there as well. All right, so now it's about to return. So it's going to, when this thing leaves, it's going to throw these values back into the main, because that's what called it, right? Right there in line 31. The main called the function, and it's getting ready to receive 4 values. So we go, as soon as I click next, I think actually the dictionary will disappear because I'm not returning that. And then some of these values are going to make it back up into the main. So off we go, and go, boom. So now back over in main, we've got the dictionary is there. I think the dictionary was there already. That's why it's still there. That's right. And then these guys here came out of the count. So now it's about to go and do the print. So we're going to go into the print again. We get blue. Notice the print doesn't care about the dictionary. It's just caring about the values that were passed in. We get some pretty simple print statements. And now it's about to come out. So we go out. It's going to return nothing, because remember, there's nothing assigned to this function. This function just calling itself. It's a void function. So we used to call it in C. And now I'm going to go next. And now that print output memory is gone. What's left now is just whatever's sitting in main. And as soon as I click next, main will go to, and now there's nothing. No variables are left in memory. It is now super clean. Not only that, but if this environment was different, I could start calling these guys all on their own. I could go print output, and as long as I gave it the right argument list, we'd be good. If I gave it another dictionary and passed it into get sales, I could then start doing my calculations that way. Yeah, basically this is actually, sorry, this would be giving it a tuple of the months. This would be me giving it a dictionary, and this would be me giving it 4 scalar or simple values, which I think 3 numbers and a string. Okay, so looking at that, is that everything I wanted to show on that? I think that actually is. So So that's how I would modularize a pretty simple program. And I guess the reason I'm kind of going through this deal here is because if you had a problem with this code, first of all, I've kind of demonstrated already it's cleaner, right? Like it's cleaning up variables as it goes. But if you knew, for example, that you were having a problem with the input section, you now have a lot less code to look at, because if you knew the problem was in the input section, you know that I got to go to get sales, and you get to look at just these lines. In fact, really the only lines you want to look at are 2 through 5, probably not the return. And it simplifies your maintenance as well. When I first started programming, I think I told you guys, but I had learned all of this on my own out of a book in an environment that hardly anyone programmed. So of course I had no real good best practices idea. And I ended up writing a massive program that did a whole bunch of different things, wasn't modularized, and I wish I would have known this kind of stuff then. It would have made my life so much easier, and you will have to understand some of this stuff, not just for this course, but in general. So what I want you to get out of this, and here's your screen print, I suppose. Let's go copy, and let me do something here so you can have it all on one screen. If I do this, and that, there you go. That should help you if you wanted to try and capture that. Anyway, that's it now for functions. As I start moving forward now, we're going to start making some changes. For example, maybe instead of having the tuple hard-coded, maybe we could get that from a file. Maybe we could have this thing writing out to a file. What happens if there's actual errors, and so on. And one other cool thing I may as well show you now. This is actually pretty good on its own, but I may as well show you this cool thing. This tuple here with get sales, right? So that's Dick Donuts equals get sales. Well, what I could do, if I'm not really going to use Dick Donut anymore, I could actually pass that function right into there, and I don't even need that line anymore. I don't even need that line anymore, because basically what's happening now is Calc Donuts is getting the get sales. Now watch this. This will be kind of cool. As we start going through in our global frame, get sales, so it's defines, and then in main, it's going to go into main. It's going to go to this line. It's going to go to Calc Donuts, but it can't even go to Calc Donuts yet, because before it goes to Calc Donuts, it's got to go to get sales. So then it's going to do the get sales stuff, and let's just do that again. And that again. Okay, and so on. All right, so that's awesome. Now, the other thing I may as well tell you too is that, you know what if I told you you didn't even need this line? You could take this. This is going to return probably about there, right? Nope, the whole thing. Yeah, the whole thing. I could take that and pass that into here. If this doesn't work, I'm okay with it, but it should work. I got like a one-liner here. So define. And now it's not going to go to print. Well, it'll want to go to print, but before it goes to print, it's going to say, okay, print. It's got to resolve Calc Donut sales. Well, before it resolves that, it's got to resolve that. So boom, off it goes to get sales. And there's my values. And now it's not bouncing all over memory. Do you see how it's almost like running top to bottom now? Except, oh, there it is, blew it. Somewhere in there, I blew it. Not because right now it's saying print output is missing 3 required positional arguments. Okay, so you know what's happening here is that he's not expecting a tuple, and this thing can't convert back from the tuple to 4 scalar values. Whatever, it's fine. I'll tell you this, I wouldn't have wanted to do that anyway necessarily, because because that's becoming a bear to maintain now. That's what I'm thinking. So having 3 statements would have been the better way to do it. So leaving you with the lasting memory of that. That would be the better way to do that. All right, next few videos are going to be on files.